Matthew 24, verse 22. And if those days had not been shortened, no human being would be saved, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. I have heard so many theories about the shortening of the days that range from the actual number of hours in a day gets shortened to the number of days in a year is shortened. People have come up with all kinds of theories about what does it mean for those days to be shortened. Well, this passage here, Matthew 24, verse 22, is actually found in the context of a larger end-time prophecy that Jesus gave. It's the Olivet Discourse in Matthew chapter 24. So there are three questions that I want to answer with regard to this particular passage. And those are, what days are being talked about here that need to be shortened? And they're going to be shortened for the elect. But who are the elect here? Which group of elect? Because the scriptures talk about two groups of people who are the elect. One is Israel, they're God's elect nation, and the other are believers. Okay, believers are the elect too. So we're going to have to figure out which group of elect is going to have the days be shortened for their sake, and the question is by how much? So this discussion is actually in the context of two other questions that the disciples asked at the very beginning of Matthew chapter 24 of the Olivet Discourse. They asked two questions, and the answers to these two questions are going to help us figure this out right here. Okay, the answer is actually in the text. One of the problems, though, we have is often we can't see the forest for the trees. We're so intent on, looking at every little thing as we go along that we forget what the question was that the disciples were asking. And Jesus is going into what seems like a long discussion, and as he goes on in the discussion, we sort of forget what those questions were that he's answering. Okay, so there are two questions that they asked, okay, right here. And if we'll just sort of step back, let the text say what the text is going to say, try not to read anything into the text that isn't there, just let it speak for itself, I think we'll find the answer to these questions. The other thing is we have to let go of preconceived eschatology or things that we think should be there. So if we approach Bible study, especially end time Bible study, with the idea of, I already know what it should say. It should say something about a pre-tribulation rapture. It should say that, or post-trib rapture, or it should say something about the rapture or whatever. If we have a precondition for what we think this needs to say, we'll tend to see what we want to see. But what we really need to do is just let the Bible say what it's going to say, let God speak through his word, and we'll actually find that the answers show up in a really clean sort of way. We don't have to, mess around with the text or try to, torture the verses to make them say what we want. We can actually just let the text speak for itself. And that I found is like the amazing thing that actually helps us to determine some of this end time stuff. Okay, so the two questions, what is the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Now, it's kind of the same question, because the sign of your coming, okay, they're asking for a sign, but it's the sign of Jesus coming. That is his parousia. So the parousia is when the king would come and be present. So when is Jesus coming as king? That was kind of the question they were asking. And they said there has to be a sign that goes with that. Okay, so what they wanted to know is, what is the sign that the kingdom was coming and the end of the age? Because when the king is here in his kingdom, we're in the kingdom age, and this age ends. Okay, so we go to this point, the sign of his coming, and then this age, the age that we're in right now, and notice it's not saying anything about a church age or anything like that. It just, the disciples wanted to know when this age would end and the kingdom age would begin. And they said, is there a sign for that? Okay, now here's the deal. There is a sign for it. No, it's not wars and rumors of wars and so on and so forth. You have to go all the way down to verse 30. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Okay, the sign, actually, if we go back to verse 29, we're going to see the prelude to the sign. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Okay, so when we read this passage here about the sun being darkened and the moon turning to blood and the stars falling from heaven, that should bring to mind the sixth seal in the book of Revelation, when the sun goes dark, the moon turns to blood, and the people on earth see the Son of Man in heaven, okay, and they go into their caves and underground bunkers and so on. All right, that's the sign of the Son of Man, and it's after the tribulation of those days. So apparently there's going to be some tribulation here. Okay. And then we're going to see what I call the sixth seal. And there's also another passage that I want to look at. That's Joel chapter 2, verse 10. The earth quakes before them, the heavens tremble, the sun and moon are darkened, the stars withdraw their shining. The Lord utters his voice before his army, for his host is exceeding great. He that executes his word is powerful, for the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can endure it? What we see this is connected with something we call the day of the Lord. Okay, the day of the Lord starts right here. When the sun goes dark, the moon turns to blood. The day of the Lord and the kingdom age are synonymous. Okay, they're synonymous. Let's take a look at Joel chapter 2, verse 30. And I will give portents in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke, and the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. Okay, so sun goes dark, moon is turned to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord. All right, the great and terrible day of the Lord. So the sign of Jesus coming is not going to be until after the tribulation of those days. What is the tribulation of those days? Well, it depends on who you're talking about, because Matthew 24 actually shows us two different groups of people. And the first group are people who love and serve Jesus, who are going to be willing to die for their testimony. And they're mentioned in verses 4 through 14 is the first group of the elect. Okay, so verses 4 through 14, and this is believers. Okay, and then the second group is verses 15 through 28. Okay, and these are the remnant of Israel. So let's take a look at the first group of elect and see what we can come up with, okay? So this starts in verse 4. Take heed that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name saying, I'm the Christ. Nation will rise against nation, rumors of wars and so on. They will deliver you up to tribulation. Okay, so there's going to be tribulation for believers. Okay, don't panic, anybody, okay? I can just feel all these pre-tribulation rapture people panicking right now and going, oh, no, we have to go through the tribulation. I'm not saying that, okay? We're just exegeting the passage, okay? We're just going to exegete what's here. So, nation will rise against nation. They'll deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. You'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And it's that phrase right there, my name's sake, that we know that we're talking about believers, because the remnant of Israel is not going to be killed because they are testifying to Jesus. And it says that many will fall away and betray one another, and wickedness will be multiplied. And then it says in verse 13, but he who endures to the end will be saved. That word saved, it doesn't mean like saved from their sins here. What this means is they're going to be rescued. They're going to be delivered. He who endures to the end will be rescued. Okay, so what end is he talking about? He's talking about the end of the age. This is the end of the age. Sixth seal begins the sign of the Son of Man, and the day of the Lord, or the kingdom age, begins. What Jesus is saying here is that believers who endure up until this point here, basically until just before or right around the sixth seal, that's the end of the age, they will be rescued. And if you've been following my channel, you understand this is basically the third rapture. Okay, this is the group that is going to be delivered or rescued at the end of the age. Okay, which is right here at the sign of the Son of Man, the sixth seal. Okay, the next group of people is the remnant of Israel, and we see their tribulation actually starting at the time of the abomination of desolation. When you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, then flee, and so on and so forth. Verse 21, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And here's our verse. And if those days had not been shortened, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. There is coming a time when there are certain days that are going to be shortened for the sake of this elect right here, believers. So there's going to be a time of tribulation for believers. And if they endure to the end of the age, they're going to be rescued. Okay, the end of the age is when the sign of the Son of Man appears in heaven, and that's the sixth seal events. This begins the day of the Lord, or the kingdom age. So tribulation for believers will be up until the sixth seal, when the day of the Lord begins. And one of the things that we read about in Joel chapter 2 is that this is going to be the great and terrible day. And a lot of people will go, well, I thought this was going to be the millennial reign. This is the kingdom. Well, it is, but remember, the day of the Lord begins with wrath. It begins with wrath. So what we have here, a tribulation for believers. They'll be rescued just before the sign of the Son of Man appearing in heaven. And then there will be the great and terrible day of the Lord, according to Joel chapter 2. The day of the Lord is the kingdom. The day of the Lord is going to last 1,000 years. The end of the age is right here. When the day of the Lord begins, the age is over. Now, for the Jews, they're going to be okay up until a time that we call the abomination of desolation. And then there is going to be a time of great tribulation. especially for Israel. But Israel is going to flee into the wilderness, and they're going to be kept safe there. So the days do not have to be shortened for Israel because they're going to be kept safe. There's a place in the wilderness for 1,260 days that God has prepared for them. We know that from Revelation. So they don't have to be, their days do not have to be shortened because they're going to be in the wilderness being kept safe. But there is going to be a time of great tribulation, and it's during this time right here that believers are going to be beheaded by the Antichrist. But there is going to be a time of tribulation even before this. This is the fifth seal martyrs. This is the tribulation where people are delivering one another up for death. This is actually going to happen even before this time right here. Then at this time, this is when the remnant of Israel will flee at the abomination of desolation. And for 1,260 days, they're going to be kept safe in the wilderness. The question now is, we have the sixth seal right here. So where's the seventh seal? Well, it'll probably be pretty much right after that. And then immediately after those seal events, we have the wrath coming. And who's it coming on? It's on the beast and the beast kingdom. So these are the seven bowls. And they're going to be happening in the very beginning here of the day of the Lord. It's a great and terrible day. Who's it terrible for? It's terrible for the beast, the false prophet, the people who follow the beast, the entities, the fallen angels, and all of that, who are all part of the beast kingdom. I've done a video, did Paul teach a pre-wrath rapture? He did, actually. It's this one right here. Okay, before the day of the Lord begins. The day of the Lord is it's not the tribulation. Okay, the day of the Lord is not synonymous with what we call the tribulation. The day of the Lord is the kingdom age, but it starts out with wrath. Okay, it starts out with wrath, where God is going to clean house and get rid of all of those evil entities before Jesus sets up his kingdom. He's not going to have Satan roaming the earth, or have the demons, or have fallen angels, or have the angels from the pit, or the earth dwellers, or the hybrids, or any of those beings during the millennium. And so this time of wrath of the seven bowls that we read about in Revelation 16 is going to take place right here, so that when Jesus ushers in his kingdom, none of those beings are here. So we have Jesus appearing in heaven right here. When does he actually come to earth? Well, it's at Armageddon. And so the time frame from the abomination all the way right here is actually 1,260 days, or 42 months. So you can see that the beast is still going to be here all the way until Armageddon, when Jesus returns right around the 6th and 7th bowls. How much time is there between the abomination and this time of rescue? And how much time is there between when the sign of the Son of Man appears in heaven and Christ comes at Armageddon? Well, we don't know. Okay, this is what we don't know here. This is the day and hour we don't know. We don't know when the Lord is going to come. We don't know when the day of the Lord is going to happen. And this is the rapture right here, this one, when believers are rescued. This is the rapture that we don't know. But we actually know two raptures that are going to happen before this one. This is the third one. This is the one Paul talks about, how we who are alive and survive, that word is basically, it's the word remnant. We who are alive and are the remnant till the coming of the Lord, we're going to be caught up to meet believers in the air. There's already going to be believers in heaven. They're going to come and meet this third group right here. But basically, what we're talking about is the days that are being shortened are the days of tribulation under the beast, the reign of the beast, for believers. That's the elect that's going to be saved, because the remnant's going to be kept safe. And we don't know how many days this is cut short. We just know that sometime after the abomination of desolation, but before Jesus returns at Armageddon, the signs associated with the sixth seal, sun going dark, moon turning to blood, the sign of the Son of Man appearing in heaven will happen. And right at that time, those days will be cut short for believers. The end of the age takes place when the beginning of the next age happens. And the age of the kingdom begins with wrath. It begins with the great and terrible day of the Lord. It begins with darkness and not light. All right. And then once the wrath of God has been poured out, Jesus will do the cleanup, mop up stuff at Armageddon. And the very last thing is the seventh trumpet. It comes at the very end at the seventh trumpet. And that's when the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. So I hope I was able to answer those questions. You go ahead and read the passages again. Actually take a look at it. Make sure that you can answer the questions that the disciples were asking, and then be able to answer these questions here. What days are shortened? They're shortened for the elect, but which elect? Believers or the remnant? And by how much? And why is it that they're shortened for the elect, believers, but not for the remnant? And then the end of the age, you need to be able to identify that. The end of the age is when the new age begins, and there is a sign that tells us when that transfer of ages takes place. Okay? It's the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. That's when it happens. And it's going to happen during the reign of the beast. During the reign of the beast, this sign is going to take place. And they're going to see it. They're going to run into their hiding places. That's why one of the bowls is the three foul demon spirits that come out of the mouth of the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet, and lure people or deceive people to gathering together at Armageddon. Okay, they're in their hidey holes. They're hiding in their bunkers. They see this sign and they lose heart. And that's why Satan and the dragon and the beast and the false prophet have to send out these demonic spirits to lure them to Armageddon, because they're reluctant to come. Okay, and this is the sign that denotes the change from one age to the next age, and believers who endure to the end of the age are going to be rescued. Okay, there you have it. Leave a comment in the comments section. We'll see you on another video. Till then, have a blessed day.